Hi, folks, and welcome to our latest webinar, Real-Time Data, Real Impact. I'm Johnny Kirk, and I'm joined by Ray, my colleague. I'll give you a little kind of run through of what we're going to do. We're going to do some introductions, and I'm going to talk for a little bit about the impact of data, and then we're going to move quite quickly into data on screen and lots of examples, lots of customer examples of how people are achieving stuff, getting data on screen. And then we're going to do some demos and actually do a little bit of how to get your data on screen and really how to get up and running with that. So we'll start with some introductions. As I said, I'm Johnny. I am the VP of Product here at ScreenCloud. So what do I do at ScreenCloud? Well, I work with our engineering teams and our product team to build the product. But also, I always say I've got the best job in the company because I also get to work with our sales teams and our customer success teams and really everyone around the business engaging with our customers. So over to you, Ray. What is it you do at ScreenCloud?
Thanks, Johnny. So my name's Ray Lawler. I am the solutions architect at ScreenCloud. I work in our solutions engineering department within Pro Services. So my job is to help our customers connect their systems to ScreenCloud, get the most out of ScreenCloud from a technical point of view. And I work very closely with our IT heroes and in our customer base and help them get up and going with ScreenCloud. So I'm sort of the techie guy. Hope that explains it.
It does, although I've got a better explanation, and Ray didn't know this was coming. But one of the things you learn very quickly is that what Ray actually does is point at screens. So here we have him very effectively pointing at a screen. Oh, and he can point in the other direction at screens as well. Importantly, when it's a big screen, he uses his whole hand to point at the screen. So yeah, just in case you thought we were all wearing the same clothes, those pictures were taken at our retreat last year when we were all getting ready for this photograph. So in all seriousness though, Ray is the guy to point you in the right direction, right? So we work with a lot of our customers. When they've got a challenge like getting data on screen, he's one of the team that go in and just help and point the right direction, as I said. So what I would say as we go through this webinar, the questions option is open on the right-hand side. You'll see a little speech bubble with a question mark. Fire any questions in there and we'll try to get to them at the end. There's also the option just to add into chat. So what I would love you to do through the course of this whole webinar is pop in things that you would love to get on screen. Ideas you have about content that you think would make a difference if your frontline employees were able to get access to it and have the right data to hand. Okay, so I'm going to take a few minutes and really talk about, I guess, a little bit of theory. I was planning on getting a little bit into the science behind data, but then I thought, well, we all need a good data story. So I am by no means an athlete or one of the top 10 athletes in ScreenCloud or 20 or 30, whatever number you want to go to, but I did recently upgrade my watch to this nice smartwatch. And I've actually been really amazed by the amount of data on how it's impacting. So I want to take that journey. So the type of data I most associate with the watch, and the one I had previous, was kind of training data. So it would tell me about my load and what level my training is at, whether I'm productive or maintenance or recovery and all that great stuff if you're training for an event or just running in general. And then you can see on the right here, it's saying, oh yes, you're in the tempo, which is you're building up both aerobic and aerobic. And there's lots of really data. And the key thing here is it's capturing a lot of data from HRV to my VO max, all the data you need about staying healthy. But actually, that really isn't enough. Just capturing and presenting that data historically isn't really enough. What I've noticed then is the next level is that it brings me the data when I need it. It starts predicting. So it's telling me, well, today's suggestion are sprints. That's not going to happen. Okay, but today's suggestion is sprints. And then the second one, that kind of middle one there of what is your weekly goals? What's going on this week? And today, in terms of how intense your exercise has been, and how many minutes of intense exercise should you be doing today? And then the one on the right there, just literally when you're exercising, talking about what is your cadence right now, what's your heart rate right now, giving me data that you can respond to right now. I've been doing a little bit of running, and I'm kind of training for a half marathon, and I totally rely on my watch during that run, not just to feed me with podcasts, but also to tell me whether my pace is too fast or too slow, because I'm useless at that. I always go far too fast, and then 3 minutes in, I'm absolutely wrecked. So I rely on that data at the right time to keep me. So this is kind of starting with capturing the data and then moving into actually it being real time and impacting you. And this is the best bit. This is what I'm enjoying so much about this particular watch. And it's tied to my objectives as a person, because I have set in the date for my marathon. And so it's actually not just giving me training data, but it's monitoring my sleep. I love the fact that it tells me sometimes to sleep more. Sometimes it's, in this case, it's saying, you don't need as much sleep. And I really like the fact that it encourages me and celebrates me taking naps. That is just, that's really good. But actually, in all seriousness, there's a really important story behind that. So I'm going to tell that same story I've just told you, but instead of using smartwatch, I'm going to just relate it to the last 100 years of theory around data. Now, some people will love this, others will hate it. For those who hate it, it's only going to be a couple of minutes. Really, the impact of data on businesses was felt most around the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, with Taylorism, basically Frederick Taylor, and also Henry Ford, when they really started running businesses by measuring what was happening and experimenting and changing it and breaking apart processes, and really that was the beginning of the journey of productivity and data-driven businesses. And that continued on really for well over half a century, where you had this scientific management approach. But then the next era really was around 2010, when we entered the era, I guess, of people would call it big data, or just the analytics era, when people started to really capture immense amounts of data. And even in that journey over the last kind of 15 years, it's kind of gone from where it was all about capturing the data to now trending towards actionable insights. What's the point of having all the data if you're not actually getting access and usage to it? For relevance around the dates, just some of you, and I'm sure a lot of you, will be Power BI users. Power BI was first launched as a component within Microsoft 365 in 2013, and then it became its own product in 2015. So it's 10 years old. And there was Excel plugins before that from around 2010, that really did that analysis. So you can see this journey of 100 years that kind of mirrors my experience with the smartwatch. And then this is a really important concept that kind of come out right in between those in the 70s, and it's known as Goodhart's Law. And Goodhart's Law basically states that when something you're measuring, when a measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure. In other words, one of the things that happens is you get unintended consequences, or it can sometimes be called perverse incentives, where incentives start clashing within a business or even the whole business itself. And really the most fun illustration of that is what's known as the Cobra effect. And there's lots of illustrations you can Google, but the Cobra effect is when in India, in a certain region, they were overrun. There was a problem with cobras. So the local government, they started paying people to kill cobras. So all you had to do was bring your dead cobras, and you would get paid for however many dead cobras you brought in. But of course, instantly, what happened? That spun up a world of cobra breeding. So cobra breeders started all of this, and people were actually breeding cobras so they could kill them and take them in. So then, of course, once the authorities realized this, of course, they ended their program. They were like, okay, we're going to stop paying people for killing cobras. What happened then? All the cobras and all of the breeders were let out. And so the problem was magnified. They had many times more cobras than they had at the beginning. It's a great little story, just illustrating how Focusing on a single metric can be really powerful in an instant, in a moment, but you've got to build up this breadth of measures and breadth of data. And that's what I love about the watch. Like I'm not a young man. I don't have objectives of breaking half marathon or marathon times at all, but I do intend to stay mobile and as healthy as I can until I'm 20 years older than I am now. And part of that is going to be measuring my sleep, my consumption of water, as much as it is my activity. And so you need this balance of metrics to really start to see progress. So that kind of lays the groundwork of what are some of the benefits you can see, a little bit of history around data. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just keep moving forward in this vein and talk about, well, why get that data on screen? And we're going to keep it a little bit theoretical for a few more minutes and then dig into some practicalities. So this is a great report. The QR codes on the screen. This was a Harvard Business Review. In fact, this was the Harvard Business Review Analytics Service. And it's a really interesting report. It's not too heavy. It's about 15 pages long. And it really looked at what happens when you equip frontline workers to become decision makers. That's the crux. What happens when you give them the ability to make good decisions on the front line. And I've included this graph, and don't worry too much about the detail, because I just want you to notice the shape of it. The top line in each of these, the top row is the leaders in the category. The middle row is the followers in the category, and the third row is the laggards, okay? And across all of these topics, customer engagement, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, innovation, profitability, market position, across all of those, the leading companies were the companies that viewed frontline decision-making as a priority. They were the ones that reported that they saw a significant impact of giving the frontline data. And there's this great quote that data is powerful when it is in everyone's hands. And that was from the Global VP of Commerce and Digital Sales at Vodafone, who's now the CEO of BT globally and is totally committed to empowering the frontline to have access to the data they need. This is a report that we actually commissioned. It's about a year and a half ago now, into a year, and in partnership with Chrome Enterprise, one of our partners. And it's a very interesting report, and it dives deep into the impact of digital signage. And I'm just going to pull out a couple of statistics from it. One is that the frontline workers feel that office workers get more opportunities, and they just feel that they don't have access. And the key phrase here is to digital information sources. And 79% saying that, 63% saying that messages from leadership just don't make it to them. So the key things they need, they don't get. And there's no point laboring this. But we could spend 3 hours going through reports identifying that that's a problem. And so I don't want to labor that. I want to step forward and say, well, actually then, okay, well, we're not here to talk about why screens can address that problem. We're here to talk about why using screens to solve that problem and combine that with communicating data to the front line for decision making, why that matters. So here's a few pain points. I love this phrase. Data is trapped in databases. I'm not someone who understands databases in any depth. I think I do, and then I talk to some of our engineers and I get lost quite quickly. But I don't want to understand databases, and you know what? Most frontline workers don't want to understand databases. They want to be doing what they're doing, and they want to make progress and deliver on their responsibilities. So we need to get the data to them, not the database. A lot of the time, teams don't have the access to the right data at the right location, which just means they can get the data, but it means going and talking to someone, joining a meeting, joining a Zoom, maybe going and getting printouts to take down to the factory floor or whatever. There's this constant running back and forward in order to keep up to date with data. And then another thing is data being out of date. That's just a common occurrence whenever it's not at the location you need it. And then another illegible format. So having data either in formats that can't be read if it's on a screen, or in formats that aren't clear enough for people to understand how to make decisions based on it. If it's just a lot of numbers, very few people can interpret that into ways that they can make good decisions. So based on those pain points, what's the cost to the business? Well, teams make uninformed decisions. When data is trapped in databases, they just make decisions that they're not equipped to make. And then they waste a lot of time. They waste a lot of time running back and forward, getting the data. And then I think it just starts getting worse from there. And people make confident decisions, but wrong decisions whenever their data is out of date. They've got this data, they're really confident, but they didn't realize something has changed in the interim, and their confident decision is actually not helpful. And then finally, it could just be a wasted investment. If you're not getting it, the data to people in ways that are actionable or accessible to them, you're just putting money into no benefit. That's just a little quote from one of our customers. Okay, that's all the theory. There we go. I'm looking at the time. We're staying on decent time here. That we're done with all the theory. Some people will love that. Some people will be wishing it was over. The question is it real? Is what we're talking about here real at all? So this is where I want to really introduce Ray back into the fray here and have a little bit of a conversation and explore just some of the examples of where our customers have been using data and the impact that has had.
Yeah. So look, we've seen many examples of how customers are actually using our system to get important data to frontline workers, and it ranges from really business critical manufacturing sort of operations right through to sort of social nudging and that kind of thing. And I've got a few examples here that I can pull up on screen that will sort of demonstrate this. I think we'll start at the social nudging end and we'll get to the really juicy stuff at the end. But this is one that we actually developed here within ScreenCloud. This is an air quality and heat index application. This isn't any custom development that you would need to do. This is an actual application on our system that you just put in your location and up will come this information. This was important actually for some companies in California. Any companies that have any offices in California, there's legislation in place now that companies have to tell their frontline workers the heat index and air quality of the location they're in. And actually then we found that lots of companies took this up. And again, this is another version of very quickly just putting some very key numbers on screen. Johnny said earlier about getting the data in the right format, right? So this could easily have been a sheet printed out and set somewhere in the office. Well, if you want to know the heat index today or the air pollution today, go and look at the sheet. But actually just getting that formatted up on screen very quickly means that anyone walking through the lobbies or in the break rooms of these companies can very quickly see that information. So that's one area where it's very small, very easy kind of way of getting some vital data to your frontline workers. Next one I want to show you is something actually we did in-house ourselves. So this is more of a social nudging kind of thing. This was done by a developer here in ScreenCloud, Chris, who we have an app called Strava, which is that app that sort of it's like a community of exercise, fitness, and that kind of thing. Well admit I'm not an expert, but so basically we have a community where we encourage our colleagues to kind of get more active and stuff, and this is a little league table of how everyone was performing, and Chris put this screen together, and then we just put it up on screen here in the office. And so everyone arriving in the morning could see how are we doing, how many kilometers are we clocking up. So it's that idea of kind of social nudging. And it's not too serious. It doesn't have to be kind of real, like business critical stuff. It's to do with building community within your workforce.
I will point out
a bit more.
It did change behavior. And there are a few of us that genuinely did a lot more kilometers in May and we're in June. So
I was one of those guys. All right, so the next example is something that's a bit more serious. So this is an actual in situ screen, one of our customers that counts the amount of days since an accident in the plant. Okay, so a little bit more serious, but it is the same kind of social social nudging, right? This is encouraging people to stay safe within the office. You see here at the bottom, there's a Think Safe, Act Safe kind of campaign that this company was running. And this is a little playgrounds instance on our system where they put the date of the accident in, and the little JavaScript counts the day since that date and presents it on screen. And as you pointed out earlier, Johnny, we actually have off-the-shelf apps for this as well. So there's many ways of achieving this kind of thing on our platform. What I really like about this is look how plain it is. Like there's nothing overly kind of complex going on here at all. This is one big number that at a glance from 30, 40, 50 meters across the plant, you can see it right away. And it's not complex. It's not a huge spreadsheet with lots of different colors and different connections. It's very simple, very plain. Here's the number, okay? So it's a good example of social nudging, but in a serious way. Sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
Of course, whenever you've got one big number like that, it doesn't need to be on screen all the time. That's going to be part of all your general communications, but everyone will know that number very quickly because it's so bold.
Exactly, and it creates a sense of shared achievement as well, which is a nice thing. Which is what I mean by this kind of social kind of nudging. So a couple of other examples here, and we're going to get the real good stuff. We wanted to show you this. This is a dashboards instance for one of our customers, and this is a pop-up notification that comes up when there is some critical bit of information that needs to be seen. And what's good about that is there's absolutely no ambiguity here. Something needs to be actioned. The frontline workers get to see that immediately once this appears on screen. So this is the thing about if you imagine that this CO2 danger was sitting in some laptop in a back office somewhere within this kind of plant or this work environment, how soon would that be seen? A manager would have to go in and open that document and see what are the CO2 levels today, and then go and alert. So there's this. It's kind of bridging the gap between the database and the actual people who need to see that information right away. All right, so now we're going to move on to some more sort of serious operational kind of difference that a dashboard on Screen Cloud can make. So this is a really, really good example. What you're seeing here, and I hope you can see it a little bit of detail. We don't want to give too much away here, but what you're seeing is a live status map of all the machines in this plant, this manufacturing plant. Okay, so you might see there's some green in there, there's some orange, some red, some blue. Those color codes match up with the status of a machine, right? And this is a really interesting story. So we visited this plant a number of months ago, and the managers of the shop floor told us what they used to do before Screen Cloud was installed. They had a laptop or a computer station in the back office, and the manager used to have to visit the office every 30 minutes, 60 minutes to go and see what is the status of these machines, how are we doing across the whole floor. But what tended to happen was they were getting distracted with other matters as they were traveling through the floor. And so it might have been 40 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes even before they were seeing the data they needed to see. So what we did is we helped them get it off that laptop and get it into the shop floor. So now everyone, not only the managers of the floor, can actually very quickly glance and see how the entire shop floor is performing in one glance, and then address any critical issues immediately. And so what they found, and they told us this, and when we visited, was they actually have concrete stats on downtime of the machine. So every month they do a report how many hours did this machine run for the month. They noticed that after they implemented this, that downtime started to decrease dramatically to the point where they were addressing concerns right away. All right, so it's making a real solid operational difference. Getting that data out of just a laptop in a back office. So it's a really good example. Then the last one I want to show you here, just in terms of dashboarding in a manufacturing facility, again, getting the information directly to frontline workers. This is a really interesting case because what you're seeing here is a polypipe manufacturing facility. So it's plastic manufacturing. I visited this. I was on this site visit, and what they do have is this huge silo of plastic pellets, and then they feed those into the machines. And the temperature of the machines when they melt that plastic coming through is critical. It used to be that they had a clipboard, and frontline workers would have written the temperature of the machine at a given time on the clipboard, and then those reports were gathered every hour and brought to the manager, and they would have analyzed the temperatures and that kind of thing. But the machines were sophisticated enough that actually they could be connected to Power BI, And so all that data was being fed into the Microsoft databases, and then Power BI was accessing those databases, and we were able to then, this is a 4-zone layout in Screen Cloud, where we have 3 Power BI dashboards and then I think Safe campaign in there as well. But it's actually giving us as live information about that machine and how it's performing. And what they found was in their annual reports was they were wasting far less plastic. So much less plastic was going to waste on these machines. And actually they ended up rolling out across all their machines once they knew that this was critical to their business and actually making a concrete impact on their company operations. So that's some examples. And again, what we wanted to show you really was the range of how we get numbers on screen. It doesn't have to be mission critical stuff like this, although it can be, and we encourage that. But it can just be that little bit of social nudging. It can be a little bit of community building within your workers, but also getting sort of health and safety information and other critical business information up on screen. It helps bridge that gap between these obscure databases and actually getting the data where it needs to be at the right time. Right.
I think some of the other examples we've seen, and we were talking about, were around rotas and shifts, particularly. Like I know, we have it's one of the ambulance services.
That's right.
You want to tell the background of that?
Yeah. So in the NHS here in the UK, we have a customer who's an ambulance service. So the way the UK NHS is broken up into different trusts and stuff, so you have different ambulance services for different areas. We created dashboards then for them, and we plugged into their sort of on-prem systems as well for this, where you would have shift rota information. So when an ambulance worker comes into the depot that morning or that evening, depending on what shift, they could very quickly glance up and say, I'm on Johnny's team today. And they would know in the facility where they needed to go. So that was one little example, but there's more critically than that. They put up screens around the bays of where the ambulances are, which gave critical information about the ambulance in that bay, when it was due to leave, when it's due back, all that kind of stuff, any sort of mechanical information that needed to be there. So at any given time, any of the ambulance workers who work there could very quickly glance around and see exactly the status of not only their shift, but also the ambulance and stuff like that. So there's lots of information, lots of examples. Actually, I have one more slide. I forgot about this one. The control center. It's this type of setup. So this is actually it's not ambulances, but it's train and bus operators in London. And as you can see here, if you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see there's green marks there and red marks. What these are is the fleet information. So green means they're out on the road and they're operational. Red means they're in the garage for fixing, or they're offline in some fashion. And you can see here that this is the control center. So not only do those operators have access to the screens in front of them, plugged into their actual systems, they can glance up and see an overall picture of how the fleet is performing, if there's any critical issues, that kind of thing. This is, like I say, a massive screen installation that Screen Cloud manages. So it's another example of sort of business critical information, and that it's a similar setup to the ambulance service that you mentioned. All right.
I think what's really nice there is that you get this balance between central, I can see everything, kind of overview of the world, and then that narrow kind of in the bay, I've just got 3 numbers, or I've just got some specific details, and that kind of mirrors some of the use we have in Screen Cloud as well, because within Screen Cloud, our test team, for example, in the office here in Belfast, they'll be deep on their databases or in their analytics, but also the likes of me, I get the overview when I walk in every day. I see exactly what's happening. Likewise, I'm not on the sales team selling Pixies, which are our new device, but I come in every day and I see what the balance is between how many Pixies we've sold and how many are connected, or even that wonderful update we get just constantly of just how many screens are live and paired around the world.
Exactly. Actually, a good point is relating data. You were talking about this earlier, Johnny, where you're like, it's okay to have one number up there, but it's, like how many views a video has, but like what is the engagement and how do you link those 2 numbers together? What I like about the Pixie screen in our Belfast office is not only does it tell you the running total of Pixies that are installed, it tells you how many were installed today. So when we first launched, you may have added 30. Now we're adding 150 or 200 a day, and you see that acceleration. So it's putting those 2 numbers together. So it's really nice to have that bit of information on there.
Excellent, thanks, Ray. So we're going to just step forward into our last little section around Show Me How. And we've got three short demos, quite concise demos, taking 3 different approaches to getting data on screen. I'm going to start with the simple one and then hand back to Ray for some more complex ones. And actually, I really want to communicate the fact that you can have an impact with data straight away without any automation and without a lot of integration. Don't go down the route of thinking it has to be a big integration or a big automation. We've got lots of apps that make life easy. So I'm going to show you a fun little dashboard. A more challenging option.
Yeah, so if you're looking to get like properly serious about getting some of that dashboard data up on screen, I'm sure some of you watching may have seen our dashboards app before now. It allows you to
Just removing that off. Unfortunately, sorry, we had a technical problem there, in that we've just discovered with this webinar platform, when those videos play, you can't hear us talk anymore. So you got a silent video there initially, and then a second silent video. Sorry about that. So what we'll do, they're very short videos, so we'll send them out with the pack afterwards with the audio. Mine, the very first one, was very easy to see, where it was a very simple drag and drop and just manage a way of getting data on screen with about 30 seconds effort. So no automation, just literally finding a way of getting the data people need. Then Ray was demonstrating a fairly simple piece of work with using our dashboards app, which allows you to capture dashboards from behind logins. We'll send out some info on that, but so we'll apologies for that. Unfortunately, these things happen. I'm going to add one last demo piece on here. I know we get a lot of Power BI users, and actually this link, which again we'll share in the pack after, but you can scan the QR code. This is about a 35-minute webinar where I joined with the Microsoft Product Marketing Manager to discuss data and data on screen specifically relating to Power BI. The reason I'm putting that up is within that webinar, there's a good 10-minute walkthrough of how to use Power BI to communicate with your teams online. So if you're a Power BI, if you're a Microsoft user, that one's worth checking out. I didn't want to repeat 10 minutes here when that's accessible for you. Okay, so like really sorry about the problems there. We will follow up on this and give you the resources. Just before we finish then, I wanted to
there's a few questions in if we want to.
Sure.
We look.
Sure.
I can add this in. I think I can add this. Hopefully you can still hear me when I do this. But we have a question. Was the Power BI screen that you were showing earlier running on a built-in web app or using the Screen Cloud Station P1 Pro? Sorry. Right. So yeah, actually that was using Station P1 Pro, and it was a channel that was broken up into four zones, and then the Station P1 Pro was powerful enough to show 3 of those dashboards, Power BI dashboards on one screen, and I also had the little safety campaign in the corner as well. So yes, to answer your question, that was actually running on P1 Pro with our platform, with our built-in Power BI integration. All right, hopefully that answers your question. We've got another question then?
Yeah.
This one is from a non-technical user. What's the easiest way to show data on screens if using data stored in CSV or Excel? Well, that's a really good question, because it's kind of like a how long is a piece of string question. It really depends what you're looking to do. With the Excel, because it's on the Microsoft system, you can use Excel as a bit of a database for a Power BI report, for instance. And so therefore, if you've got decent data within your Excel sheet, plug Power BI into that and then bring Power BI on the screen. In terms of CSVs, actually, that's a good question, because we've in the pro services team, we've had customers who have had data stored in things like Google Sheets, which, because it has an online API, we have been able to build custom applications on top of those, which has been really, really useful for some customers. I'll give you a really good example, actually. One is a college in the northeast of the United States in New England, huge regional college. They had the idea, because of the 2020 lockdown and people working from home and that kind of thing, they're gradually getting people back into the office. And one of the things that they noticed was that things were better when people knew who was in and who was out. So we built this who's in, who's out app for them that actually plugs a little bit into their Monday.com HR system. They exported that data out into the Google Sheet, and then we connected that Google Sheet and put it on screen. So what they ended up with was a screen that when a colleague walks in through the door, they see the screen and they're actually able to see who's in the office that day, who are they going to meet when they get upstairs, who's working from home, who's working remotely at a conference or some sort of workshop. And then at a very quick glance, they have their little avatars and stuff on screens. It was really personalized and really, really nice thing to have for them. At a glance, they were able to see, who am I meeting today, who's in the office today. And again, it's those little touches. As I said earlier, it's not all about sort of very high-end technical operational stuff. It's sometimes just to do with those little soft touches, you know. Yeah, so to answer your question, lots of different ways of using your CSV or Excel data to get on screen. Lots. All right, thank you for that one.
Another question in there: how do we make sure sensitive data stays secure when we're displaying company data? Okay, so can answer that in a few respects. So obviously you're putting it on the screen. So step number one, make sure the screen is somewhere secure that people aren't walking past. That always surprised me that sometimes you'd have whiteboards facing windows and everyone walking past sees all your plans. But yes, so how do you get it to stay secure? Well, first of all, if it's in Power BI, we've erred on the side of caution with our Power BI integration, so it's very secure. It will require it will use the Microsoft authentication and require you to access it. Obviously, that's dependent on our overall security as a platform, which we're really proud of, and we're happy to answer any specific questions about where stuff's stored, encryption, and all that. Another thing, and we didn't get the demo today because of those sound issues, but is our the Playgrounds app, but the Dashboards app as well. We've got documentation around how we've gone to extremes to make sure your data stays secure. And some of that involves actually spinning up temporary servers just for processing your data and then literally destroying the server so that we're not storing it again in some instances. So we've gone to great lengths with that, but obviously there will always be a balance between what you put on screen and whatnot. One of the things that's quite interesting in manufacturing sites, and this is not to do with security, but it is to do with that privacy. We have some manufacturing customers that have separate channels set up in their business, just duplicate the channels that don't have dashboards showing. And it means when they have visitors on site, they can go to the sanitized version and with one click. So they can literally, with a click of the button, swap their screen cloud channels from showing sensitive data to not showing sensitive data, with quite literally, 20 seconds clicking through. So yeah, hope that helped. Appreciate. There's a lot you can talk about around security.
Yeah, and we're open to that conversation. So any questions on that, please let us know. Got another one here. How do I link the API screen cloud to pull data incidents from one of our applications? It's a good question. Actually, we didn't get to the Playgrounds demo, unfortunately, because of our sound issues. But part of that would have been a way for you to send data into Screen Cloud. So our Playgrounds app, just for anyone who doesn't know, is a way for you to use web technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to basically put whatever you want on screen. And part of that, you can just develop it up. And actually, we're finding a lot of customers using the AI now to help with that. So it's definitely worth having a look at. What Playgrounds does have is an application data layer. So there's a URL supplied with every single instance of Playgrounds that allows you to send some JSON data into that URL, and the app will just pick it up, and then you can use it in your JavaScript. So what I like about that as a systems architect is it switches the paradigm. I was talking to Mark, our CEO, about this last week. Usually what happens in the usual grand scheme of things when it comes to API usage, a provider will open their API to the web and then you have to auth against it. And lots of companies are afraid of that. They just don't want to open their system up for Screen Cloud to reach in. So we flip it. We open up a door on our side, and it's up to you to send that data in. Therefore, you can be sure what data is actually being moved around. So when you send your JSON into that URL, your app will pick that up, and then you can start to manipulate and use that data on screen. So my recommendation for this one, Jeff, who asked the question, is to get in touch with our solutions engineering team, myself, Casey, and Jason, and we can talk through any of your needs, and we can talk about how you might be able to do that. Sometimes it's just as very quickly as I described, making that Playgrounds work. Also, a lot of the time it's to do with building that custom integration, actually digging deeper and finding what your use case is, and seeing if we can make an integration happen. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. All right.
Finally, there's one more there around similar in that it's around spreadsheets. How do we get info on screen? We won't be able to do a demo of that right now, but it would be using the same principle that Ray mentioned about using our Playgrounds tool. I would say overall, the questions is great to hear. The questions are more around those little light level integrations, which is great. Screen Cloud is very connectable. We have GraphQL, we have our apps APIs. We also have a webhooks app, which allows you to trigger using your webhooks if you wish to get content in. And also then playgrounds is really powerful when you play with it.
Yeah.
So there's lots of options. Just to bring a picture of Ray to sit on screen beside the actual Ray. It's a simple URL, and it'll give you an overview of some of the stuff that the Pro Services team do. But actually, there's lots of entry points, and I try to do this in every webinar I do now, is point people to say, look, our Screeny, we call it, our bot inside ScreenCloud is getting better by the day. It's pretty good, and it's getting smarter by the day. So ask it questions. If you need help and you want to think, even technical questions, the bot will give you its best chance, or it'll direct you to the right documentation. And if it doesn't, there's real people there too. Our great support team will help you out and point you in the right direction, and they'll definitely be able to connect you into Ray and the rest of the Pro Services team to give you a hand with things like getting Excel sheets and using Excel sheets as a source. So we're 2 minutes over. I didn't think that was going to happen, but we are. 2 minutes isn't a bad amount of time. So really, it's just now to say thanks. And thanks for listening along. I hope it was useful. Apologies for the sound challenges, and we will send you out some nice short videos for you to watch at your leisure. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.